Hi everyone, my name is Carlo, and for those who don't know me, which I assume will be everyone because I never shown my face on this channel before, so I have a blog in Chinese that writes about board games, but right now we are doing something new. And our first guest for this channel is Jamey Stegmaier from Stonemaier Games. And Jamey, do you want to say hi to the Chinese audience?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. And to, I guess, all the people in China or Chinese fans who have played our games, thank you for doing that. I love that we can bring our games to people worldwide.
Yes, that's true. I believe Stonemaier Games are actually very popular in China. Both wingspans and size are highly regarded in those area, and I also believe there is quite a decent fan base about viticulture. And since we are talking about your game, so let's talk about your next game that's releasing. The pre-order is beginning this week, the Red Rising. Do you want to tell us about the game?
Yeah, this is the first game that we're publishing that's based on a major, or to me, it's a major intellectual property. It's a book series called Red Rising. It's a book series that I really love. Have you read the books by any chance?
I began reading or listening to the audio version since you announced it. Right now, I'm in the middle of Golden Sun, the second book of the first trilogy.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so this game is based on the first trilogy. There are two trilogies. One of them isn't complete yet. But yeah, this game is it's a hand management combo building game for 1 to 6 players, and it's based in that world. But it doesn't spoil anything about the books. It just the game is focused on the characters found in that first trilogy.
So in the recent trends of Stonemaier Games, I noticed that the games are very easy to learn and teach, but at the same time, there's lots of diverse strategies behind each game. And I found Red Rising was particularly doing well in the easy to teach part because I was actually playing the game last night with on Tabletopia.
Oh, cool.
And I find myself that I didn't need to consult the rule book at all because I learned how to play the game by just reading the material you post online on the design diary. And the only time I actually need to look at the reference card is when I got a die face that not one of the 4 rewards from the location. So that's something really hard to achieve. So how's the design process in here and what's the most challenging part to do that?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you had that experience with your first play of the game on Tabletopia. That is definitely a key part of my design philosophy and my publishing philosophy. I really want our games to be very accessible to people, so it's easy to sit down and just start playing and taking turns. And so Red Rising has a very simple gameplay where on your turn, most turns you are simply taking a card from your hand, you are playing it somewhere on the table and getting a benefit based on certain cards, and then you're going to pick up a card and gain a benefit based on where you picked up that card from. And so that's it. I mean, as you know, there are a few other rules, but that's the core simple idea behind it. And that's what we were going for, that it would be very easy to teach the game. And it's not unlike, it's a completely different game, but Wingspan is a game where the core things you're doing are very simple.
The 4 actions.
Right, 4 actions. But the depth of the gameplay comes from the variety of bird cards in the game. Same in Red Rising. There are 112 different character cards that form different combinations in your hand, and that's where the depth comes from.
And I guess for our Chinese audience, they will want to know that whether there's going to be a Chinese release for the game Red Rising.
Yes. Let me see. I can never remember which partners have announced whether they've joined a print run or not, because I usually let them announce it. So let me look and see if they have announced if they're doing that. They have not announced it yet, so I don't want to announce it for them. But I'm pretty sure that our Chinese partner Surf and Meeple is working on a Chinese version of Red Rising. But I don't want to say that for sure because it's not on the official announcement list yet.
Cool. And I think if I'm correct for Red Rising, there will actually be 2 different editions being released.
That's right. Yeah. So we decided to make 2 versions, like you said. So there's the collector's edition that looks like this, and really the standard version, the retail version, looks just like this game, although it doesn't say collector's edition. It doesn't have the individually numbered box, and there are some component differences inside the box, mostly involving metal components in this version, and some card holders and some gold foil cards. but the gameplay is exactly the same. You're getting the exact same gameplay components either way. So if people want the fancier version, they can get that directly from us on our web store, the Stonemaier Games web store. Or if they want the standard version, it costs less, and they'll be able to get that worldwide from retailers worldwide. And most of our localization partners, like Surf and Meeple, are making the retail version of it, not the collector's version of it.
Say if someone purchased the localized version, is that possible for them to purchase the upgraded component as well?
Yes, yeah, that's a great question. We are making an upgrade pack that includes the metal components and the card holders and the gold foil cards. The one challenge, though, is that the gold foil cards are in English. And so certain partners are looking into the idea of printing those cards in their language to provide that for their customers in their area. Because the gold foil cards, I'll show them to you, they're probably my favorite component of the game. They're really beautiful. So I can see why people are going to want them. And it's a language dependent component. Let's see if I can bring some up here.
It might be difficult to show on camera though.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, here's one. So here you can kind of see how that foil is on it. Yeah, it just makes the gold cards feel a little extra special in the game. Yeah, I don't know why I can only find one of those cards. Here's another one. Yeah, so
shouldn't gold have the most cards in it.
Yeah, there are a lot more gold cards in here than the other cards. They must be shuffled in somewhere into this deck. But yeah, I really do like those foil cards. So I hope we have a way to share them with people.
So speaking of the different colors in the game, I believe there are 14 different colors of characters in the game, and each of them has some unique ability or some shared trait in it. So say I know that it depends on the cards, the strategy depends on what cards are available in your hands and what cards are available on the field, but say everything else is equal, is there a particular color or character you always, or you most likely want to keep in your hand when you see them?
Well, like you said, it really varies vastly based on what you have in your hand. Even your starting hand can point you in a certain direction. But I really like the cards. My favorite cards are kind of probably the green and purple cards, because they often have end of game abilities that are a little weird. Like they might say you need to have all cards with odd numbers, odd victory point values. And so you have to go and find those odd numbered cards. So they're a little different in that way. There are lots of other, like you said, every color has kind of its own design philosophy where they do, as a group, they kind of do a similar thing, but different ways on each of the cards. But green and purple, I found particularly fun. Do you remember anything? You said you played it on Tabletopia.
Yeah,
what types of cards?
Purple was of the artist and green is the computerist, but
yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed the green cards a lot as well. I remember one of my starting camp, I had the online gambler in it.
Yeah.
And then that the ability made me name a color and then draw name 3 colors and draw 3 cards. If the color match, I get to give those cards. And I happen to go. It just so happened that all 3 cards are coming up correctly. It's just 2 golds and 1 yellow, because yellow is nowhere on the field at that point of time. So all of a sudden I have a hand of 8 cards instead of just the starting 5, which was a really exciting thing to do.
That's a really good play. Yeah, it kind of adds those moments of excitement. Especially the green cards, they have a few gambling type abilities like that.
Yeah, I really enjoy that.
Cool.
And speaking of, there were 2 different editions of Red Rising. I believe the last time you guys did that was for Side, where there was a Kickstarter edition and then a retail edition. Is there any particular reason why you stopped doing that, but all of a sudden decided to do this again?
Well, what a lot of what we've done since leaving Kickstarter. So we stopped using Kickstarter back in 2015. It was pretty easy to do that type of thing on Kickstarter, to have like a normal version of the game and then a very fancy version of the game. But since then, we've tried to include fancy stuff in the core box of all of our games. with sometimes mixed results. Like for example, in Charterstone includes metal coins. I really like that metal coins are in the box, but it definitely makes them more expensive. You have Tapestry right behind you there. Tapestry is full of really big, it's beautiful. These pre-painted miniatures that I think are really beautiful. I guess not everyone thinks they're beautiful, but
I really love
think
those
they're really,
too.
Thank you. So, and that definitely, that knocks the price up too. And so we thought, for once, instead of just putting everything beautiful in the core box and making it pretty expensive, let's see if we can offer two versions. So people who want that fancy version can get it directly from us, and people who only want to spend a little bit less can spend less. And the other reason I think it was perfect for Red Rising to do that is that I am hoping this game attracts fans of Red Rising who don't know much about modern board games and probably don't think, like for you and I, if we spend $50 on a board game, that's kind of a normal price to pay for a board game. But someone who hasn't played modern board games doesn't, that's a lot of money maybe for them to think about it as for a board game. So I wanted to offer a lower price for people who don't know a lot about modern gaming.
That makes sense. And since you also mentioned about Tapestry here, I just want to say that I remember when Tapestry was first announced, that that pre-order campaign was easily one of the most exciting campaigns that I participated in, and that's including all the different Kickstarter from all the blockbuster companies. So, and to my understanding, your strategy is actually probably the most cost efficient among all the companies in at least in America. And it's something really difficult to achieve. And I believe it's partially because you have invested so much time in the marketing campaign in a way that's a different type of cost. So what would you say would be the most enjoyable part of doing those things? And is there any part of the progress that you found less enthusiastic about?
Yeah, and one, I guess, key piece of information for someone who hasn't been involved in one of our campaigns over the last few years is that we, unlike a Kickstarter campaign, where for Kickstarter, usually people get backers, they run a project, and then they start making the product. For Stonemaier Games over the last few years, we have simply just made the product, and we keep it a secret for a long time until production is complete, and then we announce it. And by the time we announce it, we're almost ready to ship it to you. And so we did that with Tapestry. That was one of the fun things about Tapestry, that I could reveal what this game is that we've already made. And a few weeks later, we started shipping to people. And so I mean, that is definitely my favorite part of the way that we do campaigns now, because we can get you excited about something and you can then have it in your hands very soon afterwards. So I love that. You also asked, is there anything that I don't like about it? Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I do miss a little bit, that we miss out on, is getting feedback about the product before we make it. We do get a lot of feedback from people, from play testers and from people internally. But if you run a Kickstarter campaign, you're probably getting feedback from thousands of people, and it's not all great feedback, but some of that feedback can actually be really, really helpful. And so we do miss out on that a little bit. And I've tried to, that's maybe the one thing that I miss.
Oh, that's interesting. So, let's talk about the future Stonemaier release after Red Rising. I believe the next one on schedule is the expansion for Between Two Castles.
It is, yeah, right. I see the core game right behind you there.
Yes.
Yeah, we have been working on the expansion. I'm excited to share that with people.
So for this game, I think my favorite part of it is, well, the game trees make the setup super easy. It does add a little time for cleaning up, but I do enjoy the fact that you can just put out, just show that. So everything is organized, and the depth of the tiles is actually 9 tiles, which is the starting hand of each player. So that's a really clever design, and I think that's the only Stonemaier game that has that right now.
For that easy setup, yeah. I mean, we have other games that have inserts, like the Red Rising has a plastic insert, but nothing that makes setup that easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, Between Two Castles is also the only Stonemaier game that doesn't have a solo mode in it when it's released.
Yes, yeah. And that, I think, was a mistake. And so the expansion will have a solo mode.
Oh,
but that was a good lesson for me to learn, that I think at this point, there are so many solo gamers out there in the world that that we need to have that solo version in every core game that we produce.
But I guess it is difficult to make a solo mode for this particular game because you kind of need 3 players to make the game, and doing AI for 2 other players, that seems to be a real challenge for design. But I guess we will learn about it when we actually see the expansion.
You will, yeah. And it was a challenge, but it wasn't something that I figured out. It's the Automa factory figured it out. Yeah.
Automa, and for the Automa in Red Rising, I actually like that it's how it's spelled out is AU space and then Tama, that was just like the name for the gold class of characters in the book. In the books.
Yeah, that was a nice coincidence that the name lined up just perfectly that way.
Yeah. Okay, so I think Red Rising will be the second of your titles that has a dystopian theme behind it. The first one being Euphoria. You seem to be a really big sci-fi fan. And are you planning to do more games like this in the future?
I do. As a reader and someone who loves movies, I do love sci-fi movies. I love dystopian movies and fantasy movies as themes. And so I think one thing in a lot of our games is I like the idea of going into a new world or a different world from our own and exploring that world in the game, just like I like to read books where I get to explore a different world. So I think you'll continue to see more of that in the future in our games as well.
Oh, exciting. So any particular books or shows you have seen or read recently that you want to recommend to us?
That's a good question. Any books? What did I read recently? Oh, I'm actually reading the book Dune. Have you read Dune?
Oh, no, no, it's a really big IP, and there were several board games about it.
Yeah, one of my favorite games from last year was Dune Imperium. I really, really love that game. And so after playing that game, I was like, I need to finally read this book. I've never read Dune before. This is a pretty famous book, but I just never read it. And so I'm reading that right now and really enjoying that. And I'm looking forward to the movie that I think will come out next December.
Nice.
Did you play Dune Imperium last year?
No, that's something on my wish list right now.
It's really good.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I also recently I've read lots of different books based on different board games. I started reading Reckoners from Brandon Sanderson, and I really enjoyed that book. And that board game I've heard is really great too, and they are having a sequel to it. Have you played that one in game?
I've done both. I've read the books, and then I thought Nauvoo Games did a fantastic job with the game. It's a very cooperative, simultaneous action game, beautiful production. Yeah, I have played it and do enjoy it. Yeah.
Nice.
What have you been playing lately?
Oh, well, what I've been playing lately, I started to play Spirit Island, which is actually a really famous game, but I just played that recently, and I really enjoyed the depth of it and the diversity of different spirits. It's feel really different, and I'm looking forward to play the expansions.
I've heard the latest expansion. I haven't played it, but I've heard that I'm forgetting the name right now, but I've heard whatever the newest expansion is, maybe Jagged Earth is really good.
I couldn't even find a copy for that game right now. And another surprise I found is a really, really small game that's so new. It's not even on Kickstarter yet. I was sent a copy of the game by the publisher, and it's called Micro Dojo. It's a really micro game. And it's so small that the whole game is this big.
Oh, that is tiny.
Yeah, so I think you might enjoy this game because I do know you enjoy smaller two-player games very often. So let me see if I can show you the board. So basically, you have this 3x3 grids, and there are 4 meeples to be put on that grid. Meeples in the form of tokens, and both players can be moving those tokens and each of the space will be a different benefit for the game. And the trick about the game is that once you move one of the meeple, you put a token on top of it, and neither player can be moving that a meeple for an entire round. So when the original player they'll move again, they will move a different meeple, and that token will go to the new meeple. So the game is tricky. Well, the idea is very simple, but it's tricky because besides to pay attention to what spot you're moving onto, you need to pay attention to what spot you're leaving open, because your opponent will be the first one who can take action on that spot.
That's really clever, especially for such a small game.
Yeah, and when I played it, I got a really I got the vibe of Onitama, where you have two options available, and when you take an action, even though I cannot take the same action immediately, but in some distant future, I might be able to take it. So yeah, that's something I'm surprised by how deep the game is.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's always nice to see when you can have that depth of gameplay from such a smaller game or a game of fewer components. Yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty much the end of. One more thing. When's the pre-ordering gonna start? And it's gonna start, more importantly.
Yes, for Red Rising. Yeah, the pre-order for Red Rising will start on Wednesday, March 3rd in the morning, St. Louis time. So St. Louis is Central Time in the US, and it'll start around 10 a.m. that morning.
So by the time this video is released on YouTube, the pre-ordering should already begin. So I guess the question would be, when will it end?
Well, it'll either end when we sell out of copies, because we've already made a set number of collector's editions, but we're open to making more if there's still demand. But if we don't sell out too quickly, the pre-order it'll continue until we do sell out. The pre-order price will go through March 6th. So it's a very short pre-order period. It's March 3rd through March 6th to get the special pre-order pricing.
And for those who's living in China, Hong Kong, or Taiwan, that's gonna be March 7th.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Interesting. And for the pricing, we will only know when the pre-order officially begins. That's correct, right?
That's correct. Yeah. And the reason I do that, I know it's kind of weird that we do that, but really, like, even over the past weekend, I've been making slight changes based on what I want that price to be. So I want it to be a very fair price, but I also want it to work for us. So until the last minute, I might change that price, and that's why I don't announce it in advance. So I'm not locked into a certain price.
Okay, I look forward to playing the game physically inside of just on Tabletopia. But if you want to try, it's on Tabletopia. I will leave a link for the Tabletopia and the actual pre-order in the description. And thanks, Jamey, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
And we will see you sometime in the future then.
All right, sounds great. Take care.
Bye. 大家好，我是鞋之推手，谢谢大家观看刚才的节目。如果你喜欢的话，欢迎分享、订阅还有点赞。如果你想看更多类似的节目的话，欢迎下面留言说你想看哪一个世界师。谢谢大家，我们下次再见。